We could hear the condemned man scream, "You bastards, I'm innocent." Then suddenly his cries stopped. We saw 2 agents pull him down from the truck, all skin and bones. It looked as if he was being floated along by the guards. It would have been easy to mistake him for an animal, with his wild hair, his bruises, his crust of dried blood, his bulging eyes. Then I noticed his mouth. That's how they shut him up. They had stuffed it full of rocks. The guards were tying him up now with 3 pieces of rope, at eye level, around the chest, and at the waist. Aim at the traitor of the fatherland. Fire. The custom was to shoot 3 salvos from a distance of 5 yards. The first salvo cut the topmost cords, killing the condemned man and causing his head to fall forward. The second salvo cut the cords around his chest and bent him forward further. The third salvo released his last tether, allowing the man's body to drop into the pit in front of him, his tomb. North Korea, in addition to China, are among the only countries that exist with concentration camps you can see from Google Maps. After World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States split Korea along the 38th parallel, and both halves moved towards their own government. Under guidance from the Soviets, North Korea reformed the Korean Communist Party that was destroyed while Korea was under Japanese rule. By 1946, the communists had turned North Korea into a police state. Over 800,000 Koreans would escape into South Korea by 1948. Kim Il-sung was the Moscow-educated puppet the Soviet Union placed in control of North Korea. Kim was unknown among the Korean communists, but was backed by Soviet power. Using that power, he purged the Korean communists supported by China. In September 1948, North Korea declared that Kim Il-sung was the democratically elected premier of the government assembly. As Soviet troops withdrew from the country, Kim led his own purge of top-level communists in the country. Since its formal inception, North Korea has become the greatest totalitarian state in the history of the world. No other country in history has exercised stricter control or rule as complete as the North Korean regime. Every aspect of the North Korean people's lives are controlled. The party does not permit marriage until the age of 28 and only gives permission if it suits the party's needs. Love and attraction play no role in the decision, and the party has denied marriages if it believes the couple is too attracted. Dedication to the Kim regime must come first. Over half of North Korea's laws are capital offenses. There are no independent news sources. Officials open and read mail before it is delivered. All print media is created by the Communist Party, and all printed material is filled with the great sayings and doings of Kim Il-sung. Textbooks teach children that North Korea is the first and only paradise on earth due to the great leader's perfect genius. No foreign media, radio, or broadcasts are permitted. The party distributes all food and goods through rations. There are no private businesses. The Communist Party owns all of the land, and farmers work in forced cooperatives. Travel to other countries is forbidden for ordinary citizens, and only the most trusted party officials are temporarily allowed to live abroad. Even then, they are continuously spied upon. When foreigners are granted permission to visit North Korea, they are accompanied by guides and translators who are most certainly spies for the Communist Party. From birth until death, North Korean citizens are taught to love and admire Kim Il-sung and hate his enemies. School children are frequently taken on trips to museums dedicated to the United States war crimes against North Korea. Much of the material is graphic, and features imagery of American soldiers violently murdering North Korean women. At recess, children play a game called Smash the Foreign-Nosed Americans to Death. And the worst name a North Korean child can be called on the playground is Magok Nam, literally, American bastard. Every North Korean citizen is required to study and love the great leader. Everywhere, photos, paintings, statues, and rallies, poems, and edifices are displayed to prove the people's love and appreciation of the paradise Kim has created. In Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, Kim has erected a 60-foot-tall statue of himself, gilded in gold. The gold came from residents who donated their gold teeth, wedding rings, and family heirlooms to demonstrate their loyalty and gratitude to the great leader. Everyone informs on one another in North Korea. You cannot confide in loved ones or friends. Negative expressions towards the party means severe punishments or death. A party official who mentioned to a friend that a North Korean sports team had lost a game in the Montreal Olympics was disappeared, collected in the middle of the night, and discovered years later at a forced labor camp. An old man playing chess pointed to an image of the great leader flanked by many women on a magazine cover, saying that Premier Kim must be enjoying himself, and was subjected to public trial and punished. The North Korean Communist Party has established the most comprehensive domestic spying operation in history. The party does not leave incorrect ideas or thoughts to chance. To prevent dissident movements, it will often deport 30 to 40% of a population to a new workplace. The rebalancing of North Koreans keeps a ratio of one domestic spying agent responsible for every 5 residents. Spies finding impure ideas report to the Political Security Council for review. If confirmed, all possessions of the accused are confiscated and they are placed in a prison camp. Only those loyal to the Korean Communist Party enjoy the forgiveness of the labor camps. Those judged disloyal to the party are condemned to death in public displays. Those communists loyal to the Chinese Communist Party when Kim took power were executed in a public stadium in front of tens of thousands of screaming and fist-waving citizens. Upon judgment of death, several young men in the front rows ran to the 6 men with axes and shovels. After the killing, the bodies of the men were tied to poles and marched around the city as songs of praise were sang to Kim Il-sung. Spies make use of electronic surveillance techniques. Listening devices are planted inside workplaces and homes. A North Korean scientist was caught complaining of rotten apples in his family's rations and called Kim Il-sung a son of a bitch. He was arrested and executed. Electronic surveillance is so widespread that a rank of spy exists simply to spy on other spies. In 1956, Kim's paranoia led to massive countrywide purges. The Flying Horse Campaign was equivalent to Maoist China's Great Leap Forward. The Communist Party hierarchy, military leaders, and civilian masses all could be sent off to labor or concentration camps or executed. No one was safe except for Kim. Kim's fear of counter-revolutionaries created the Concentrated Guidance Campaign that led to mass ideological census and registration of political purity for every individual North Korean. Those deemed counter-revolutionaries were exiled, sent to labor camps, or executed. The criteria for this distinction included any family member whose member had escaped to South Korea, former members of anti-communist organizations and their families, religious peoples and their families, former landlords and their families, businessmen and their families, partisans and their families, and war prisoners who had been returned and their families, South Korean natives, draft dodgers, prison inmates, ex-convicts, and their families. 500,000 people were killed. Unsatisfied with the results, in 1964, the party demanded all citizens re-register. 4 million North Koreans were classified as hostile and moved into labor camps. Half the remaining population was classified as wavering, and the top 25% deemed trustworthy. Classifications followed individuals for their entire lives and determined the education they would receive and whether the party would allow them to have children, their job, punishments for infractions, and the food rations they were permitted. As of 1990, after 43 years of dictatorship, the party had established 12 separate concentration camps deemed special dictatorship target areas, housing up to 200,000 political prisoners at any given time. Approximately 1 out of every 100 square miles in North Korea is used as a concentration camp. Camp conditions are life-threatening. Food is scarce, and inmates are forced to grow their own food without equipment in poor land. Housing is insufficient, with many prisoners living in caves or mud and stick huts. Clothing is insufficient for North Korean winters, and inmates are expected to work for 12 hours a day and then meet for 2 hours of thought reform classes. Prisoners are expected to maintain their loyalty to the party. Those deemed anti-party are executed or given to the military to be used for target practice. For families interned together, food is rationed to 20 ounces of corn a day and some soy paste. A common punishment, such as for a lack of enthusiasm towards the party, is cutting food rations in half. Extra food comes in the form of whatever the prisoners can catch themselves: frogs, worms, or snakes. Some prisoners have taken to raising rats and have become an underground black market industry. A great number of inmates die from malnutrition and exposure. There are no sanitation facilities or doctors. Inmates are forced to build their own quarters. Those who try to escape the camps are executed. Torture is practiced inside the camps, and prisoners are often sent to Soviet gulags and earn North Korea a wage for their labor. The total number to have died in these camps is unknown. The party has been known to subject entire populations to periods of forced labor. A canal project in Songnim City mobilized all of the residents of an entire province for 90 days. Over 100 residents died of diseases and work-related accidents. Students were forced to carry heavy loads, and if daily objectives were not met, they were forced to work overtime. The self-isolation of North Korea is unmet. Not even Stalin's Soviet Russia or Mao's China have reached the absolute control of the North Korean Communist Party. Aside from the murder of their own citizens, North Korea murdered tens of thousands of South Koreans during the Korean War. With Stalin's approval and support, North Korea invades South Korea June 25, 1950. The South Korean army, aided by the United States, drives the North Korean army out of South Korea. Within that time, North Korea massacred over 500,000 people. They conscripted another 400,000 South Korean civilians and impressed 50,000 South Korean prisoners of war into their military forces. Encouraged by radio broadcasts of Kim Il-sung, retreating communists executed the prisoners before escaping north. Soldiers and civilians were found in mass graves, executed with their hands tied behind their backs. As the Northern Korean army fled, some North Korean citizens took revenge on their captors, killing the communists and their supporters. Only after the intervention of China to bolster North Korean soldiers were U.S. and South Korean advances stopped. And as the Allied forces retreated, 685,000 North Korean citizens fled with them. As North Korea retook the land they lost, the civilians who rose up against the party and who could not escape south were sought out and executed. Shortly after, courts were set up in every village that had came into contact with the U.S. and South Korean forces. Trials were held, and all those found to have been sympathetic or who did not resist the enemy enough, or those who did not display the required patriotism and love for the great leader, were found guilty of war crimes and punished. During the war, American soldiers taken prisoner by the North Koreans were often shot before returning to camp or perished on death marches. If they did survive to make it to camp, they were subjected to torture, starvation, disease, and exposure. According to the Department of Defense statistics, of the 7,140 known American prisoners, 4,418 were returned alive. The remaining 38% had died. Compare this to the 1.2% of American soldiers to die in Nazi captivity. The North Koreans also boast of having taken 70,000 South Koreans prisoner. Fewer than 8,000 ever returned home. Following the war, Kim Il-sung was outraged and took to coordinating global terrorism operations. He sent commandos to Burma to bomb the president of South Korea as he met with Burmese leadership. The bomb missed the president, but killed 17 members of his party. Upset over South Korea hosting the Olympics, he had agents plant a bomb on a South Korean airliner in Baghdad. The plane exploded, killing 115 people on board. He sent agents into South Korea to assassinate the president. They were killed within 100 feet of his residence, but not before shooting the president's wife to death. At Panmunjom, South Korean commandos launched an unprovoked attack on U.S. guards, killing them with axes. The total number of deaths that can be ascribed to the North Korean Communist Party is unknown. Conservative estimates put the death toll around 1.6 million people, with a high estimate of 3.5 million. Given the nature of North Korean society, its tight controls on information has protected them from an accurate judgment. As time marches on, more information comes to light of their purges, labor camps, and executions to give strong evidence that this number is much higher. That, unfortunately, wasn't the worst spectacle I beheld at Yodok. In October 1985, 2 prisoners were executed by hanging, members of an elite military unit who had succeeded in fleeing the country. The guards led them up the scaffold and slipped nooses around their necks. The first fugitive was nothing short of skeletal. It was a horrible sight. Urine started trickling down both their pants. I had a strange feeling of being swallowed up in a world where the earth and sky had changed place. Once both men were finally dead, 2,000 or 3,000 prisoners in attendance were instructed to pick up a stone and hurl it at the corpse, yelling, "Down with the traitors of the people." The skin on the victims' faces eventually came undone, and nothing remained of their clothing. By the time it was my turn, stones were heaped at the foot of the gallows. The corpses were kept dangling on the ropes all through the night, guarded by security agents who made sure no one tried to bury them.